In the past, say 1 or 2 years, I've learned one of the most valuable lessons that I have learned as a photographer. It's helped me to relax when I'm out and about shooting. It's helped me to get out and take more photos in general. And overall, it's just helped me to enjoy the entire process as a whole. And that lesson is to travel light, to use less gear, to shoot with lighter lenses, and to sometimes even prioritize more practical cameras over expensive but maybe better cameras. And today I want to chat through why this lesson has been so valuable to my photography journey, and to go through how I've been putting it into practice, how I've applied it on a recent trip back home to Ireland, and of course to give some tips on how you can put it into practice as well. Good morning. I am here just out in a little sunrise walk photo session on the beautiful island of Achill in the west coast of Ireland. So I'm back home for a week, and yeah, just it's a bit of a holiday, using the time to walk around and take some photos. This morning I'm shooting with basically this camera and this little lens. I have one other small lens in my bag, that's it. I have a little pocket camera, and what else? That's about it. So let's start with the why. Why have I become such a big fan of traveling light in recent years? Here's a list of some of the biggest reasons how it's helped me. And the first and most obvious benefit is just better mobility and more freedom when I'm out shooting. With less gear, it's first of all easier to carry it, and it's just easier to move around when I'm out and about. And with my type of photography, this is really important. I like to move around a lot. I like to check for different angles, different shots when I'm out and about. So not being weighed down by a bunch of cameras and lenses really makes it more pleasant and more enjoyable for me. So not being weighed down, not having that extra weight on my back helps me to do more of that, to check for shots that maybe if I had more weight I would have skipped or I would have been lazy about. Another benefit is just it makes me a quicker and more flexible photographer. And by quicker, I specifically mean quicker to set up, quicker to change lenses, that type of stuff. There's less risk of gear damage and less need for gear maintenance, just generally out of the fact that you don't have as much and that you don't bring as much around with you, so you don't need to tend to it as much. Sometimes I've often found myself being paralyzed when I'm out and about by just having so much gear in my bag that I'm kind of afraid what happens to it. Like, I'm afraid to put my bag aside, especially in like built up areas. If you're traveling in cities or something like that, you can spend so much time thinking about the gear in your bag that you don't actually think about what you have on your camera. And one of the biggest benefits that extends beyond all of that is just generally it's probably better for your health. I'm not even that old, but I do notice as years pass on, carrying around big backpacks, that my back hurts a little bit more, especially as I sit down basically all day in my job. My poor little back is weak at the best of times, and lugging around big heavy backpacks full of gear just doesn't help that. To me, that's probably one of the biggest arguments for just traveling lighter. What have I actually done to put this into practice on some of my recent trips and over the past few years? Well, it all started with this little camera here. This is a Canon G7X Mark III, I believe. It's pretty battered and worn now, but this was my first good point and shoot camera, basically. Not as good as my bigger camera, and as I mentioned, it's pretty battered at this stage. Like, this focus ring doesn't even work and stuff. But for all that it lacks in quality, it's absolutely made up for in practicality. The sheer fact that I can just put this in my pocket and bring it with me everywhere I go has meant that I end up taking way more photographs than I would if I had to lug around a big camera and a big lens. And even though it isn't as good as the bigger camera, as I said, the quality of photos from this are still very good. This isn't like a cheap point and shoot by any means. It's a good camera, and it takes great images, just not as good as the bigger one. And sometimes the quality is not super important, especially if it's not going to be for prints or photos that are going to be professional work or something like this. Like if this is just photos that I'm taking for memories or for social media or whatever it is, just out and about to shoot on a day, then a camera like this can absolutely be more than enough. And that goes not just point and shoot camera. You can get yourself a good point and shoot camera, but it could also be something like your iPhone, or if you have like a high quality mobile phone these days, the cameras in most of them are more than good enough to take good photos. Sheer fact that you can just put it in your pocket and head out and about and take photos, that is absolutely priceless, because it means it can just be with me all of the time. The second thing that I've done to help me travel lighter, and something that I've seen great benefit from, has been to use prime lenses. Small prime lenses like this Nikon 28mm 2.8, and this is a super old 50mm lens that I've made a video about this actually in the past. Great lens, great beginner lens, highly recommend it. But these two small lenses, they've helped me to just get out shooting without the need of lugging around a big camera, a big lens. With these lenses, I can just put them on my camera, I can sling my camera around my shoulder, and I can just get out there. I don't need my big camera backpack full of gear. I can just put this on my camera and get out there. And even if I want to bring my second lens, I can even just chuck this into my normal backpack, which I've done on a lot of trips lately. I just put one on my camera, bring the other one in my backpack. Like, it can fit on a small compartment. It doesn't really need so much protection. You can just bring it with you. And then that just saves me having to pack my camera gear every time I want to get out or every time I want to go on a trip. Again, it just helps my camera to be there, more accessible with me for a longer period of time. And these lenses are also cheap. You can afford them very easily, and you're not really sacrificing on too much quality. What you're sacrificing on, I guess, is the flexibility you might get with a zoom lens. But for me, for a lot of trips, what I've found, if I'm giving up that for the need of lugging my big camera backpack through an airport, for example, then it's worth the trade-off for me. So basically, I started smaller and I'm getting bigger here. If you can't get a small camera, get small lenses. If you can't get a small lens, then maybe try a small backpack. And that's exactly something that I've done recently. A few weeks ago, actually, I bought this secondhand. It's the Think Tank turnstile bag. I think this bag has been out now for years. Like, I first saw this 10 years ago, and I kind of wanted to try it for years, but I only got around to buying it lately. And the reason I did this is because it's practical. Well, few reasons. One, it's very small, so I can only fit a certain number of cameras/lenses in here. I mean, actually, if anything, it's maybe borderline too big, to be honest. I would have maybe gone for even the smaller one if I was doing it again, but that doesn't matter. So I can only fit a certain amount of cameras and lenses in here. It's very practical, and that's exactly what I'm looking for when I mean like I'm traveling light. I want my camera bag to maybe just force me to bring less gear on a trip. So a second reason why I bought this bag is for practicality. It's basically a sling bag, and it just turns around like this while you're wearing it, and I can still access my cameras and stuff in this bag here without actually taking it off. Something that has driven me crazy over the years is the constant having to take off my bag, put it on the ground, open it up, take my lens out, open it up, have everything exposed there. So now when I'm out and about photographing, the goal with this bag is to just be able to shoot on the go. When I need to change my lens, I can turn it around like this, close it up, and put it back around. I guess a normal sling bag functions in the same way as this, but that simple functionality saves me so much headache. It saves me so much just annoyance. And then as a result, I can put that mental energy into shooting, into thinking about what I'm shooting, into moving around and taking photos. And for me, that is just worth so much. And something with these small bags is that it forces me to be intentional. I mean, intentional before I even leave the house. Like, I think that's something that's really important when it comes to creative work in general, not just photography, video, whatever it is you're doing. It's like actually thinking about the lens choices that you make before you even leave. Thinking about the types of photography that you want to take. Thinking about types of areas that you're going to be in, that kind of stuff, before you even go, rather than just going and shooting and not really having an idea and then putting it all together. I think a little bit of intentionality goes a really long way, and as a result, you'll just end up with better work and better photography. And this bag is maybe my little way of forcing me to do that. Now, I just want to say that I know this advice isn't for everybody. I know there are specific photographers that are going to need a bit more gear than others. If you're a professional photographer, say a professional sports photographer, then yeah, you're going to need a lot of gear, you're going to need a lot of heavy gear. But not even that. If you're a landscape photographer, you probably want a tripod. A lot of landscape photographers, they like taking long exposure photography, and you're going to need a tripod for that. I get it, and there's also nothing wrong with that if that's what you're into. All I'm saying is that just maybe have a think how you can keep it a bit lighter. And if you're a photographer like me, how maybe you can keep it very light. I think there's a benefit in there for all photographers. Traveling light as a photographer hasn't just resulted in me taking better photos. It's taken weight off my shoulders, both literally but mentally as well. And that has just left more room for me to enjoy my photography and to really engage in the environment that I'm shooting in. It's left me with fewer distractions like managing gear or changing lenses, and it's left me free to focus on the experience itself, which for me is what photography is all about. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll be back with another video really soon.